thank you all for coming again. And I'm really happy to see that the group chat is really useful. And thank you to everyone who is participating in that. And if you haven't participated in it, I would highly encourage you guys to help each other and reach out to another group that is inside the community and connect with them. And in the next video assignment, we're actually going to we're going to work together with one other person, because I think it would be great to have more teams sort of working together. We'll talk about that. So just to give like a recap of like where we were. So like we first talked about like decentralized science. And then we talked about like how that's what's different about decentralized science and how that will help to do these new types of research projects. And one of the important parts of there's two important parts of a DeSci project. One is the research question, and the second one is the community that is there to help with that research question. So this upcoming session in the future, we are going to be talk about how to build a community and work together on that. But without further ado today, we will start with the projects here. And so I think we will start with Matthew, because he was submitted. We'll just do it in the order that you guys submitted. And let's see, let me just pause here. So pause. All right. Oh, admit. Hold on. Does anyone have any questions? Let me while we're setting this up, does anyone have any questions they want to ask or say how things went this previous week? Or who you connected with in the group, if you connected, or if you got help if someone was really helpful for you, give them a shout out and thank them here. I know there was a good discussion on like NMR. How did that go for people? Who was Peter? Was that you who had the NMR discussion going?
I mean, it was pretty cool to see that like there were people familiar with the technique and asking questions about it. So that certainly got me excited.
Awesome. Were you able to learn something or make a help people with that? Help make some sort of connection or some sort of item?
Well, I think in general, I just want people to know that, a lot of this stuff is more accessible than people might think. So, and I kind of want to do that with a broad range of instrumentation. I mean, that's basically the big idea around spectroscopy DAO as a whole.
Very cool. Awesome. Okay. So to begin, we will start with Matthew's project on, and we'll just jump right in.
This is Matthew Nonius, and my research question is, what is a good level of decentralization in regards to decentralized science? Now, what inspired me to ask this question is the fact that many of the articles, blogs, and other media on my feed tend to be biased towards one end of this spectrum. They never really discuss the common ground between centralization and decentralization. So by asking this question, I aim to address the level of decentralization that promotes the most innovation, the most collaboration, and the most community engagement. And an example of community engagement would be how like SpaceX live streams their missions and launches on YouTube for the world to see. Now, how I actually plan to address what was discussed previously is by surveying those interested or already active within their fields of science and seeing what they wish to have within their workflows. And also by analyzing existing organization workflows and classifying those practices as decentralized or centralized. And with this data, I can compare the level of decentralization of existing workflows to the level that those surveyed wish to have. If you have any questions or concerns, feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Got it. Okay. Does anyone have any questions? I have a couple, but I'll see if anyone else has one before.
Just curious, is part of the overall question kind of like getting at what decentralization means in terms of like the tech stack involved? Like, does it always have to interface with blockchain stuff? And it's something that I wonder about too. Like, sometimes the tooling or the tech stack is not quite ready, but you want to do the science, and so the people new to the subject, they're like, I don't know, blockchain, but they like the idea of like open science or democratic science or things like that. So it's kind of a tension that I wonder a lot about too.
Yeah, and Matt, can you relate how how the level of decentralized science connects to the workflow idea?
Yeah, so what I really want to, I guess, like measure is the level of decentralization for like workflow infrastructures. So like the practices that go into sharing code, for example, like open source projects on GitHub, compared to on that last slide, I compared it to something called Bitbucket, which is more or less like closed source code sharing for corporations and businesses, right? So that would be like the opposite end of the spectrum, which is more centralized. And I guess in the case of like the atomizer, where I'm really focused on publications and what it takes to get publications out, I know that like there's only small committees that tend to review publications before they're out. And like for dissertations, you have a defense and for a committee and whatnot. And I guess like maybe there's people out there that wish that more eyes and more hands are involved with the, I guess, like stages of carrying a publication out and getting it out to the public.
Cool. Very cool. And like what would be like a hypothesis that you would like generate, like that you could generate on this question?
Yeah, I'd say like what my theory is that they're like the perfect level of decentralization would be like straight down the middle between centralized and decentralized, especially for science. I say this because it would prevent a lot of biases for like novel findings and whatnot. There's this good article that I've read. It was just like a committee of scientists and researchers who all just like contributed to this one publication regarding the fact that a lot of these committees bias towards more novel findings. So a lot of the potential publications, their ideas are shot down, right? But in the case that we go fully decentralized, small organizations and small groups can like, I guess, have a bias to promote or engage more with projects and ideas that I guess follow or align with their agendas.
Got it. Cool. Does anyone else have any questions? Excellent. Well, we're excited for that. I think that'll be very good. Okay. Next, we have the distributed governance project with Charles here.
Hi everyone, this is Charles Joe with Ledgerback, and specifically for distributed governance for a framework project.
Let's see. Charles, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Do you know why there's a
video got a
black
little choppy.
box? What?
I was just saying the video got like a little choppy when I was trying to upload it yesterday.
Oh, okay.
Hi everyone, this is Charles Joe with Ledgerback, and specifically for distributed governance for a framework project. In this video, I'm just going to talk about the research question I came up with. So my research question is, when organizations design features and governance processes aligned with the thematic narratives and projects of a DAO? In other words, when organizations fit in the mold or standard described to DAOs? So basically, how do we, where are the features of the DAO, and one's organization?
I can't hear it. Maybe Charles, maybe you can, and it doesn't look like the transcribing is working. Maybe you can tell us.
Yeah. Sorry about the audio, guys. If I recall, my research question is specifically what are the design features and governance processes, which are pretty much most aligned with our thematic narrative, regarding DAOs, and is there a way to actually measure that? Find a way to measure that organizations actually plan those features that we're looking for actually into practice. So that's my primary research question. I think some of the sub questions, one of them was, how do you define a DAO? To, how do you actually make some of us living standardized scoring system which can actually keep up with the times, because DAOs themselves are pretty much an experiment, and so our current conceptualization of them are gonna keep changing as time goes along. And I think I'm kind of forgetting the third sub question, and I'll just move on from there. And then lastly, the notes. I just want to mention that I'm not trying to measure decentralization directly, because that leads to some very annoying issues, especially since this centralization itself can be a little bit of a wonky concept. And really what I'm looking for is not whether something's actually decentralized, more just does it have the features and the processes you would associate with the DAO.
So you're just looking at the legal system, not necessarily the political, like how it's implemented, but like the underlying like structure.
Yeah, I mean, really focusing more on just the organization design. So like the actual like legal
or design. That's what I meant to say. Like design, not necessarily like implementation. Or is that wrong?
Well, I'm not sure what you mean by like the implementation.
Or like how it's done in practice. Is that what you're trying? Is that what you're saying, or is that am I off? Like, is there like, are you measuring like the sort of the documents of the DAO, and then you're seeing like based on that, or based on like the empirical of like how people like act and behave within the organization?
Okay, okay, I got you now. Yeah, it's based more on the actual documents itself.
Got it.
So it's not focused on necessarily what's going on internally, more based on the documents and the overall system that's been put in place.
Got it. Danica, do you have any feedback? Are you there, Danica? You should.
Yeah. About what in particular?
Or Charles, Charles and Danica, you guys should definitely connect, since it sounds like you're doing like in the same general area. Danica's sort of looking into like DAOs and maybe collecting data from them, and Charles is doing governance. So, but there could be like a good like intersection there between you two.
Yeah, I would love to chat more about that, because that's definitely something I'm interested in, and kind of trying to find a better way to get in touch with DAOs to measure that.
Yeah, so I think Danica is looking into more of like the how they behave. I think we'll hear about what Danica will talk about, but I mean, maybe there could be like a good thing, and certainly even if there is not a good like direct research question, you guys are going to still probably share a lot of the same data set, so you could collaborate on that too.
Oh, and I was also Orange. Let's look at at least Matt from earlier and how he was going to measure his. Like, should I also mention how I'm going to try to measure the actual implementation of the design features and governance processes?
Got it. Yeah. Very cool. Awesome. Well, so Danica and Charles, definitely make sure to connect offline, and I think probably for the next research, the next video, like you're gonna have to work with one other team, so you guys should probably work together, or if you want. And Charles, try and make sure the video works next time. That would be good.
Okay. Before I move on.
Okay.
Question,
wait. One more thing. Elijah had a question. Go ahead, Elijah.
Thank you. Perfect. Let's see. So my question was around, are you familiar with are you going to be looking at like organizational structure kind of? And like interactions between like you said, you're looking at like governance structure, like proposals or like member interactions and things like that. Sort of like, have you heard of SOBOL, like in terms of like mapping like an organization?
Yeah, no, I've heard of SOBOL, cool projects, but I'm not going to be looking internally in the organization. Okay. It's taking more of like an outside-in approach.
Right. Okay. I'm still just trying to looking at the policies and things, and then just mapping out like instead of a member being like there's a grants committee versus like a some other structure, and like there's the members of the community, or so like kind of looking at things like that more abstractly, or like I'm just trying to get a sense of.
Yeah, look at things a little bit like more abstractly. So, instead of not necessarily trying to figure out what's internally somewhat going on, this DAO can have any multiple different types of structures, and that really depends on the DAO. I can't really say if that's necessarily positive or negative depending on because it depends really on the group. Rather, what I'm looking for is more at least if I'm looking for committees to be like more do they have a participate governance system? Like if they have participate governance system and they implement that through committees or through councils, then all of that's what technically still work. And so that way I can actually generalize it, among the DAOs, because if one DAO has like committees and another has councils, I can't really say that, oh, this is better than that, because they use different systems.
Right. No, super cool. I could totally nerd out on that with you for a while. I've got deep down the DAO governance hole. So yeah, cool.
Oh yeah, just contact me. But I'm always down to nerd out about governance.
And I think it's cool also because you have a really good way of, if you can like figure out a way to like scalably collect data, like you could in theory just have like a scraper go after all these documents and then put it into ChatGPT. So it makes it very like scalable in terms of like the types of data you can collect, which would be really cool.
Oh yeah, and then additionally as well, just at least the artifact I'm using is just a survey. People can always like send in questions as well, because it's just a source of, if you have a question and you think there's something that people should know about DAOs, or it's really general, you can just add the question and we can talk about it. So that way we can actually have a little bit more crowdsourcing over what goes into the survey as well.
I love that. That is cool. You can have like a meta level. It's like you're both crowdsourcing the data and crowdsourcing the survey. That's cool. Maybe you make it into a chatbot too, and all the data just gets dumped into a chatbot, and instead of having a research paper, you have like a chatbot paper that you can just like, it tells you the first 2 paragraphs, and then it sort of asks you a question around. I don't know. There's lots you could do there.
Oh yeah, I'll put that down.
Does anyone else have any questions? Brian or Darian or Jackson or Joel or Julian or Matt, Michael?
Just a lot. It'll be really helpful to get more of a map of just the variety of DAO structures. It's a lot to reckon with, to the point where I often just feel frozen about even the idea of like moving more toward a formal DAO. So that'll be helpful.
There could also be a cool thing where you try and relate it to existing government structures, like a parliamentary or a bicameral or a like dictator or monarchy, and sort of create a link between like DAOs and things that we sort of already know of, and see if there's any sort of difference that contrasts those two things. But yeah.
Anarchy.
Yeah, that would be another one.
Yeah, I know that sounds like, at least for right now, start to try to tag some of these the actual systems people are using, so that way, like for example, like Optimism uses like a bicameral system. So this was like, oh, they use bicameral, this other one uses bicameral. So it's this one's like, oh, you can actually compare the ones which are using similar systems, and hopefully that's gonna help people figure out how to manage their own DAOs. And lastly, thanks for all the questions, guys. They're really nice.
Awesome. Yes. Well, very excited about this project, Charles. I think you have a great idea here, and excited to see the execution. Okay, so next up we have Elijah with Cannabis Genome DAO, and let's go. And there we go.
The research question I'm going to be attempting to answer in Combinator is, can I improve upon existing predictions of cannabis effects based upon molecular data? So there's been plenty of attempts, and basically beat to death the attempt to classify based upon or predict effects based upon classification of indica sativa hybrid. But that's mostly a description, right? And so there's been actually a bunch of descriptions of strains and of their effects collected, things like the Leafly data set. And so we're going to be maybe doing a meta-analysis combining these different effects with things like chemical compounds detected in different strains, genomic data, gene expression data, as well as this data from a Harvard study that it showed that terpene content is predictive in terms of predicting effects and the flavor. But essentially, it's it's structured. It says could represent a reliable marker And so there's definitely room to improve upon these predictions. This was done in 2019. There's been a lot of data collected since then, and we'll be collecting data from anybody in this cohort who's interested in sharing their particular experiences with cannabis products and varieties.
I like it. Okay, so what can you say more about that data set that you'd collect that was already existing? What was that, Elijah? This one here, the Leafly data. What is that?
Meta-analysis combining.
Oh, Elijah, are you there?
I was muted. There we go.
There we go.
Am I that quiet right now as well?
No, we can hear you.
Okay, good. Yes, Leafly is a it's like a brand listing, product listing, product recommendations. It's a media outlet as well. So they publish a lot of content about just sort of like basic intro to cannabis industry, learning about products, like featuring different things. It's like a informational sort of media blog and media company. But in that, they have this part of the website where people can review strains or review products. And so they have the largest sort of standing product review database out there. And it's just, on their website, you can scrape it and they'll get mad at you, but they also just released a data set, which I think actually even has more data than is on their website. But essentially it's just the biggest, collection of product reviews. And even though there's no actual molecular or, certificate of analysis data linked to those products, it's just somebody saying, "Oh, I had this," or it could be somebody saying, "I had this random strain." Right? There's no verification that that's actually what they had, which is also a huge problem. Which is, but yeah, that's it's still just the biggest data set for that type of data out there.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And did someone else want to say something? So you're going to test to see if the genomic structure can give you an insight into the ontology that has been developed already by the Leafly? Kind
of. Basically, I've identified like 5 input data types that we're going to use to try and we've actually refined this since yesterday. The effects that we're getting, or we can predict like basically what to breed. Which strains to use to breed based upon. So we're going to start with genetic data. We'll have that along with compound data. So the chemical compounds of the plant after it's been grown. So we'll be able to link that to genetic data, genomic data, and then have the user experience as well, right? So what is this? Because a lot of these compounds, it's known what their effect is individually, but that's the big difference. And one of the main reasons why cannabis and natural products in general don't get approved by the FDA is because they're natural product, right? It's usually like it's a plant. It's not like a single molecule, which is hard enough to get approved by the FDA, right? So that when you're dealing with like whole plant, like these natural products, it's something called like the entourage effect, where sure, we know what each of these things does individually, and that's well characterized. But when you have a list of 30, 40 different compounds that are known to have physiological effects, how does that play out? What's the person's experience? And so that's kind of what the experience data is.
Oh, interesting. You might, supplements group, are you here? Supplement DAO? Darian?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, we're here.
You guys might want to work together with talk with Cannabis Genome, because I know in supplements, like stacking of nootropics is another big issue, right? And like how these things interact with each other. So maybe there could be a good collaboration or just brainstorm session between you guys.
Yeah, very cool. We'd love to connect.
Yeah.
So Jackson and Darian, definitely make sure to connect with Elijah. After send each other a DM now.
Yeah, if anybody else has experience in survey design, I mean, there's a couple, I think, examples we can look for surveys about gathering experience data, but we're going to try and collect our own as well, just to have a really fresh data set, and also just a little something of our own to contribute to the overall the field and the data set itself. So if anybody wants to contribute, knows anybody that would want to contribute that data, you can submit more than one response. So yeah, definitely, that's going to be our data collection part of it.
I mean, maybe you could even work with Tristan or who's the people? What's there? Okay, it's hard to remember one's name here. Julian from Tristan is doing the incentivized clinical trials, and Julian and is doing the volunteers, and they're doing clinical trials, and maybe I don't know, especially Tristan's work. Like you could send them something, of course, only if they pay in to the system. That way, you wouldn't be running the costs necessarily.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's Tristan. Okay. Sorry, I couldn't hear you, Michael.
Oh yeah, is that Tristan who's talking?
Yeah, I think his mic came off, but I think he was outside or something.
Oh, yeah. So you just connect with Tristan or connect with, I don't know if I should refer to you guys by the project name but Tristan from Incentivized Clinical Trials and Julian from Voluntas about potentially working together on figuring out ways to do survey design, or Danica is also very good at survey design in the social sciences.
Cool. Yeah, and then also I had responses to the questions from last time. I think it was your question, Michael, and somebody else's about, or Brian's maybe about.
How easy it is to do this.
Yeah, cost of sequencing and stuff. So yeah, won't be requiring anybody to send any genome data in, but it was actually pretty affordable. They have USB DNA sequencers now. You can plug it into your computer and USB port and sequence DNA. It's probably about $100 a sample. The problem is sample prep, which is actually something I sort of reverse engineered while I was running the lab. So you can send a DNA collection kit out to somebody. It costs us a couple pennies to make. It's a little piece of paper, and you take a leaf and you crush it onto the paper. I'll have to show it next time. You crush the leaf onto the paper, and then it's like a crude DNA extract, and it's totally legal to mail from anywhere in the world.
Wow.
And sequencing quality. Yeah,
Very
so
cool.
it's pretty easy and pretty cheap. Yeah.
I mean, I could imagine you could you could do those. I mean, I think there's two ways to do it. Like if you really wanted to be decentralized, you could send those to people and then have them do it all. But I think there's another one where maybe there's like different levels of engagement with your project. And, some people are sequencers nodes and some people are tester nodes.
Yeah.
And maybe that would get like, higher throughput or like have less funnel attrition. So I don't know, that'll be something that you can experiment with and use your own knowledge in the field to figure out.
I like that idea. That sounds fun.
Does anyone else have any questions for Elijah?
Yeah, actually, in terms of like survey design and data collection, we're kind of in the similar, vein of like trying to design a survey right now. I say we, but it's honestly mostly Jackson because I'm handling most of the tech side of things. And one of the sites that we kind of looked at for this was Arrowid. I'm just wondering if you have looked at that. It's obviously very divorced from science. It's very, well, that's inaccurate. It's very, it just records people's experiences with various substances. So I'm wondering, A, if you've seen that, and B, what your opinion on is of that might be.
Yeah, definitely. Arrowhead, you can read all sorts of experiences on Arrowhead, not just cannabis, but yeah, it's definitely something, in terms of collecting those experiences. They become less relevant as the language changes, right? Especially that's kind of just a random observation, not really backed by anything, but over the past few years, there's definitely been a lot of language changes in the cannabis industry and culture in general. Like it's been a largely unscientific industry. I mean, calling things strain, for example, is one example of a non-scientific cultural language idiosyncrasy of cannabis, right? Strain is not a scientifically accurate term for varieties of plants, but then people debate it, and now some people are saying yes, it is. But then people are calling it cultivar. It's just like this. People are just trying to figure out what to call things. Indica sativa. I literally give a whole hour-long talk about why indica sativa is a lie, scientifically, because it's meant to describe the morphology of the plant and not the chemical content. So it's just been used as a marketing tool, to kind of make it simple for people, which there is, some utility to it, but there's just all these sort of common myths around, that are incorporated in the language, and it's changing so much that I think it's not, they're people's experiences, especially the products that are on the market are different than they were 5 years ago, right? So people's experiences, I think, are going to change so differently that we want fresh experiences.
that's a really good point, and something that we're currently struggling with. Like, how do you make a survey that
Yeah.
where the data you gather is still going to be valid in like a year from now?
Right. So yeah, so I don't know. I'll let you know after I dig a little bit more into the data whether that's I find more value in the older stuff. But yeah, I'll definitely take a look at Airwood. So thanks for reminding me about that.
Awesome. I look forward to it.
Yeah.
I have one comment, just real quick.
Yeah.
In the food industry, we use there's like a whole field of sensory science to evaluate flavor composition, and using it as a way to quantize subjective experiences, and it's fairly robust. So it's something to look into. Just like the whole field of sensory science seems to have that locked down.
Interesting.
We need, maybe you guys can work together or something. But yeah, that's figuring out that we need like a nose DAO or a smell DAO or something.
There's also Qualia Research Institute. I'm not super familiar with their work, but I recently talked to some folks there who have been doing similar work on like how do you convey sensory experience in a survey where what you're measuring is measuring the same thing, right? So you could maybe check out some of their papers too. We could
What's it
talk
called?
about that.
Qualia Research Institute.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds familiar.
I mean, there's also like questions around how like people measure pain in some situations. Like obviously people like measure these, have different responses to pain. And I was reading something about this a really long time ago, and they come up with some way to like normalize it based on something. Maybe you can give someone a control and have them compare it to the control. I mean, I was looking here, like this rating here was a little bit confusing, like the 5 through 4.6, like how they sort of attained that. But these other things were like much more like easy to understand, at least.
Those are star ratings, by the way.
What was it?
Those are star ratings, by the
Star
way.
ratings. Yeah, but
Yeah.
the problem with star ratings is like a Likert scale. Like, how do you normalize that against like someone's 2 stars very different from another person's like 5?
Exactly.
I mean, you can normalize it like within the batch of like how many, just so that everyone you just normalize everyone. And so if someone writes everything 5, it's just like really everything sort of a 3 or something. But
maybe try and correlate it with like a sentiment analysis of the text. And see if it matches, and if it matches, then you can keep it. If not, you throw it out. Like,
but I think this is cool because I think it identifies a problem of when you are doing like for everyone. It's like when you're doing large scale research, how do you normal or like free form or free text responses? How do you actually get out quantifiable data, or do you need quantifiable data in order to do a research project? But I see that this is an interesting like issue that you're finding here, and maybe we can do like a talk on it or something.
Yeah, I was thinking about using this thing. I mean, you can make a point there. There's this thing called the Jacquard index, where it's finding the like correlation between two like two lists of things, 2 lists of items, right? And you find their overlap, and it's like and you can use it for like it's like a complex finding a join essentially of the 2 sets. But things like that. Just trying to get some sort of quantitation out of non-quantitative data.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Anyone else? Okay, we will. Oh, thank you, Tris. Thank you, Elijah. Sounds very cool. And let me just go back.
Hi everyone, this is Charles Joe with Ledgerback, and specifically for its Governance for Framework project.
So next we have Tristan from the research.
This is Tristan. I think my research question is whether or not this incentive structure that I've described increases participation in trials. So whether or not people putting in some amount of cryptocurrency before they participate in the trial, and if they have the possibility of losing that, if they don't adhere to the trial, if they drop out, does this cause people to adhere better and submit their data later? Clearly, for some experiments, this is not ethical, but for some, I think it is. And then one concern is whether or not it's randomized properly. You don't want to be testing for people who opt in to escrow versus people who opt out. So as long as it's kind of a random option, I think that this could be a really useful study to show that there's a way of incentivizing participation in a way that actually causes there to be more data at the end of the experiment.
Excellent. That was very clear. Really understood what was happening. Tristan, are you here with us? I think he's on. Okay. Let's see. It's Tristan. Yeah, there he is. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think this is brilliant. I mean, maybe one way to do it. This isn't perfect, but like maybe you could just like do it with something that's not like a clinical trial, and maybe you could extrapolate if you're concerned about like the ethics of it, or maybe there's like a way of doing a meta study. But I think the research question is brilliant. Like it's very clear, and I think it's really important.
Yeah, that's pretty similar to mine. This is Julian from Holland House. I think the question is always, or the big question is kind of like, baseline data for me. So like we have a sense from our experience, kind of roughly of what we'd expect, but it's like, I feel like I'm curious how you're thinking about that, like, getting the baseline, right? Because like there's different figures out there about like how bad clinical trial recruitment and retention is, but I don't know. It's tough to kind of like know what study to trust, and I think there's always a danger of like, okay, I'm going to go to like the one that looks the worst for my baseline, and then by comparison, I'll look great. But I'm curious how you're thinking about that.
Tristan? We can't hear you, Tristan. Still can't hear you. Uh-oh. Reset the mic. Well, while he's redoing it, does anyone else have a question? And then hopefully we can get that resolved. It looks like, oh, there you're back. Someone talked.
Oh, it was me. Sorry. Joel. Yeah, really interesting point about the ethics. I'm curious what, either now or at some future time, I'm curious to hear more about, those ethical dilemmas and what kind of studies might be more conducive to this incentive structure. And yeah, great point too, just about how there's, especially if it involves crypto, like there's a certain level of facility with that or comfort interacting with that kind of currency, and people need the money, or can they just kind of absorb the cost and go, I'm just not going to finish because it's only $10 or whatever. Whereas others might be like really into that. So yeah, just sort of affirming the great points that you raised in the video.
Okay, can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so for the first question, yeah, I agree. Trying to compare against existing studies isn't the right approach. I think it's better to do it within the study, because every study has a different difficulty of adherence and motivation and the sample. So I think it's better to sort of, as people join the study, like they have a 50% chance of like being like, hey, you have an option. If you want to join, you have to do this escrow thing. And then compare against the people who didn't have escrow presented to them, and compare against the people who opted into escrow versus who declined the escrow. And then from there, maybe you can make worthwhile comparisons. On the question of the ethics, I mean, one of the fundamental parts of ethical experimentation is the option to leave, to just quit participating. So it depends on the situation, right? Like, if it's something really basic, like try out this new weed strain, I don't think that there's really an ethical issue. But if it's something like some new biomedical therapy that might have side effects, then that is something where people should feel free to leave the study if they're no longer feel comfortable or healthy doing so.
Interesting.
Yeah, that helps. Thanks.
Yeah, I agree. I think it doesn't seem too difficult. And like the gold standard is like, yeah, running a little trial within your recruitment or whatever, and just presenting some patients or recruits with like the control like status quo. Don't incent them in the way that you want, you know?
Yep. So I would love to run this on top of other people's studies. So if this seems like it could be a good fit for what anyone else is thinking about, please DM me and we can talk more.
Excellent. We love people collaborating like that. Very good. So everyone DM Tristan if you want to help in that study. That is great. Very cool. I think that's a wonderful, wonderful experiment you got going there, Tristan.
Thanks.
Okay. Next up, we have Brian with Koji DAO.
Hi there, this is Brian again. So fundamentally, the research question I want to answer is, can someone with minimal equipment and minimal materials be able to replicate my protocols? And that's like the whole gamut of all the protocols that I want to design for the DIY production of, different alternative proteins from food waste. So yeah, that's a really large question. In my head, I think probably the easiest thing to do is to break it up into small segments and chunks and start with the easiest and most fundamental protocol or experiment that I can do that someone else can replicate. So my goal is to answer the question, can someone replicate a protocol designed to hydrolyze food waste sort of at the kitchen level, if you will, into amino acids and sugars, right? So that to me, that's the most fundamental process that you can do, and then we can see what we can do with that feedstock or that material. As most foods are made up of either carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, it's fairly straightforward to consider. If you add some kind of enzyme or if you add some kind of microorganism, that it can be hydrolyzed, at least at the small scale. So that's what I'm going to start with. Obviously, from there, there's a lot of other pathways, but that's to me is the most basic form of that research question.
Excellent. So is this more about replicating the results that you got or replicating the process in which you get the results?
It would be like replicating the process to get the results. Because what's important is I want this to be a project that allows others to be able to do it at home. Like I'm thinking, like a lot of homebrew people who make beer and wine at home, like they can do it it's fairly straightforward for a lot of people to do it. And, those are all like really established methods. So I'm hoping like, can I make something that people can just do on their own anywhere, which would be awesome. And how would I'm not entirely sure how I would measure that, but I would like to measure that question, like how well is this, or how easy is it for someone to do X, Y, and Z?
Oh, that's cool. I mean, that would be like really helpful if there was a measure doing like, maybe like I was just thinking like you have a recipe and you feed it into ChatGPT and it gives you a score from 1 to 5 about how difficult this recipe is. And so maybe there's like some sort of like meta analysis on how easy you think it would be to replicate a thing. Like I know there's these like NASA TLX scores, which is like
yep, the TLR scores. Yep,
TLR scores.
They're really cool.
And that gives you like cognitive load. Maybe there's a similar thing on cognitive load for experimentation or something. But yeah, I mean, I think doing your experiment and seeing how yours is, then also, I mean, I think this will be really impactful for decentralized. I think you have a great idea of like, oh, I want to replicate my specific thing. But then also like there's another really solid, once you've solved that, there's another really solid meta idea of like how difficult it is to replicate an experiment for the purposes of decentralized science.
Yeah, exactly. Because like it's not so much the experiment itself. Like what I'm going to do is probably fairly basic, but if someone else can do it with minimum cognitive load, like you're mentioning. I think that'd be really helpful to know, because then you can just design experiments in the future that consider that or put that into perspective. And then someone that, you know, my hope is that someone in, like, I don't know, Southeast Asia with like very, very simple like culinary equipment can suddenly produce their own alternative proteins. That would be crazy and amazing. But that's really, really
Yeah. I think this is very cool. Does anyone else have a question or comment?
Brian, I'm curious, like, is there an example that comes top of mind, like something that's already within reach, or some tech that's already doing something like this, just so I'd love to imagine.
Yeah. So like there's this whole subreddit group of people who are really, really into growing koji. Hence Koji DAO. So that's just growing this mold that lives on rice. And it's been used for thousands of years to make soy sauce and sake and miso and so on. But it's a very complex process. And somehow people are able to make it at home, despite, you know, it's not sanitary, it's not sterilized, like people do like such crazy stuff with it. But ultimately it allows them to produce enzymes. And these are enzymes that, like, you know, is produced on the industrial scale, and it's very difficult to necessarily make. But somehow these guys with their like random, you know, sous vide equipment plus like some of, you know, a tub are able to do it. And it's the same in mycology too. Like people are able to make psilocybin mushrooms, and, you know, are be able to grow like very rare mushrooms with very, very ridiculous protocols, like using Uncle Ben's rice like packets and then inoculating with spores. Like it's these like, how simple can you get? But it used to be almost impossible 40 years ago. So that's kind of that's sort of the example. It's not a perfect one-to-one, but that's where my head is in terms of all this.
It makes me wonder how much, you know, certain scientific insights are kind of catching up with like indigenous wisdom, or, you know, very traditional food making practices. And it's very cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brian, I'd be happy to grow some weird stuff for you.
I was thinking about it, I was like, I wonder what kind of, you know, molecular fingerprinting we can do. But yeah, I definitely would love help on that, especially in the design of the experimentation as well. Just knowing, like, because I'm not a biologist by formal training. I kind of just fell into it because I love fermenting. So most of my stuff is chemistry, so I'm really good at that, but I'm not necessarily like keyed in on, you know, what's the latest molecular biology techniques, or how, like when you said that there's a USB drive for fingerprinting or for DNA analysis, I was like, great, wow, I'm really behind. Like I feel like a dinosaur. Like I thought that wasn't possible yet, so that was cool to know.
Awesome. Yeah, let's definitely connect.
I mean, another thing I was thinking of, maybe video could be another thing. Like one person could, it depends on what it means to replicate a process, but maybe just having someone point a webcam at the thing that they're building at the moment. I need to know a little bit more, but then you could have either Chat GPT or DALL-E analyze it, or a Mechanical Turker analyze it, have someone else rate how well they did in replicating it, would be like another possible idea. But it depends. It depends on the nature of the experiment.
That's really fascinating. I didn't even think about that, because I would like to be able to create video tutorials, but to actually reverse it and say, okay, now you do it and tell me how you did. That's actually like a really cool science educational aspect of, you know, because it, like, if you go to school and you try to do chemistry, it's like almost impossible, or any kind of lab research. Like you can't do it outside. You can't do it decentralized. But if there was a way to do that, to teach someone, that would be incredible.
And another thing that this brought to mind is how you explain the protocol to someone, I think is going to be important in knowing how well they adhere to it. So, I mean, some things are great over text, but also some things just work better over video, right? And like if if I read a recipe on how to cook, it's like much easier just to watch like a TikTok tutorial on it than it is to like, read some website. So I think like when determining the score and when determining how you're going to explain it, that's an important thing to think about, and how well they're able to replicate it.
Yeah, those are definitely good points. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
I feel
Anyone
like
else?
another thing. Oh, can you hear me? Well, something that comes to mind, like if I'm understanding your goal, you want people to be able to create the same things as you, but with different tools than you, like simpler tools, right?
Yeah, and there might be some feedback process where I'm like, okay, that's the tools that most people can use, like maybe 75%. So then I'll just like update the protocol
Right.
and do it myself. And there's kind of, it's not necessarily a static process. At least that's the hope.
It would just be interesting if like you compare people who you show the full protocol to with people where maybe you intentionally leave things out, because that could maybe make them feel more creative about like, how do I solve this? Because I know like sometimes it's hard to innovate even obvious things when you already know the current way of doing it, right? And so maybe you could kind of play with that too.
I like that, Danica. Yeah, that's an interesting experiment to play on people.
Awesome. Anyone else? Okay, well, next up, awesome work there, Brian. And thank you also, Brian, for contributing so much in the group chat. It has been very helpful. Next up, we have Nassim from, and thank you, Joel, also for contributing. Thank you, everyone, for contributing. I'm just giving shouts out to people that I've just noticed gave a lot. Okay, next up, we have Nassim with Sidex.
One of my beliefs is that crypto should have been the currency of academia and research from the beginning. And it's a bit of an anomaly that it went straight to, DeFi and the monkey JPEGs and skipped the step where it is adopted by researchers in universities. When you think about it, that's the path that other technologies like email, AI, and pretty much every breakthrough technology went through. So one of my goals with Sidex and my main research question would be to identify which groups within academia truly need decentralized software. And so I have started answering this question constructively by doing it. I have a few ongoing partnerships with such groups. There's MedDAO, which is a DAO for medical doctors. I have a group of researchers in AI who intend to create a journal at the intersection of AI and Web3. We have a blockchain law review project with a group of law scholars. I've also talked to some people at Research Hub who like Sidex and would like to integrate it for an on-chain recall of their existing publications. And an idea that emerged in the last couple of days, because it is related, would be to have Psychonautics log platform for people to journal and find common ideas and symbols within their experiences. So I'm talking to some people in this field as well. Now, there is also a second related question that I would like to answer. It is how to make Web3 frictionless for everyone else, people who don't really need it. And so for this, I also have a few interesting answers that emerged, particularly with Privy, which is a platform that allows you to use Web3 without a wallet. Check it out, privy.io. Another path that would answer this question would be to make UI improvements to Sidex.
Cool. Okay, so I like the first question. I think this, we want to learn things that are sort of, Nassim, are you there? Nassim, are you with us? All right, well, I will just say, I like the first question a lot, which was, what communities need Web3 or need decentralized software? Maybe learning something about that. I think the second question doesn't teach us as much about like the underlying structure of nature or science. But there are HCI questions, human computer interaction questions around like usability and stuff. I think that's like an HCI question, but we'll see it. I would say probably lean more towards the first one to try and understand like the nature of certain types of research groups and what about them needs like a decentralized platform. Does anyone else have any questions or comments for Nassim and he'll get the video. Anybody? Well, we can connect with Nassim offline. And is anyone one more comment? Anyone with HCI or publishing background? Okay, we will move on. All right, next up, supplement DAO. Jackson and Darian.
Title: Measuring User Engagement with the Supplement DAO Minimal Viable Product, MVP and Initial Case Study. Objective: to understand how potential users engage with the MVP of Supplement DAO and gauge the initial usability and receptiveness of its core features. Define the study group. Identify a diverse group of individuals interested in health and wellness, particularly those who use or have an interest in nootropics and supplements. Introduce the MVP. Introduce the study group to the MVP of Supplement DAO, providing necessary training on its usage and key features, such as posting and interacting with other users' posts. Initial survey. Conduct an initial survey to understand the expectations and initial perceptions of the participants towards the Supplement DAO MVP. Monitor engagement. Monitor user activity on the MVP. Key metrics could include number of posts and interaction with other posts. Post-engagement survey. Conduct a post-engagement survey to measure changes in user perceptions and satisfaction with the Supplement DAO MVP. Analysis. Compare the initial and post-engagement survey results, and analyze engagement metrics to assess the usability and acceptance of the Supplement DAO MVP. Conclusions. Draw conclusions based on the results of the case study, highlighting the strengths and potential areas for improvement of the Supplement DAO MVP. Discuss potential implications for the full development and success of Supplement DAO. This study would provide essential insights into the initial reception of the Supplement DAO MVP, offering valuable feedback for refining the platform before wider release.
Okay, so your research question, let's go here.
Supplement DAO engage to understand
Jackson and Darian, are you guys here?
An initial case study.
Yeah, I'm here.
Objective.
Our real research
to
question
understand
is really
how
to
potential
understand the viability of this project as a whole, using survey data. So collecting survey data based on an MVP of the project to see if it's sustainable in the ecosystem.
Got it.
So really studying and researching user interactions.
Got it. Got it. Does anyone have a question or comment for Supplement DAO? Why are you guys more interested in that as opposed to testing out a supplement or going out, like trying to look at metformin or some thing to see if people would be interested in that? Like, I mean, what does it mean? What does it mean to be like to like test like if Supplement DAO is successful? Like, I don't know, like is like the counterfactual here that like you weren't able to get 100 users, or?
Well,
I think we're looking for, yeah, Darren, you can go ahead.
Okay, basically it's similar to actually, I guess, Tristan's research question here, which we're basically testing whether this DAO structure of like rewarding users is enough to get people and users interested in filling out and providing data to us.
So is there going to be one where Supplement DAO where they're not rewarded, or?
I guess there could be. Yeah, there could be. I mean, that is something, yeah, I haven't thought about. Primarily, we're looking to, we're less excited about, running this as necessarily a research question and more excited about creating something that people can use that is a database of information. But that being said, if we're able to answer that research question as well, that's all gravy.
I mean, I would push you guys to nudge you guys to try and collect some data set around something. I think the questions around like the platforms for platforms infinitely down isn't the most exciting thing, because at the end of the day, no one actually knows. No one has any actual data there. So I don't know. I think testing at least one drug or one thing or collecting one data set would be very beneficial to the ecosystem. But of course, you guys are free to do as you wish.
Yeah, sure, Michael. I think we'd be trying to collect initially on a few different supplements, most likely some of the most popular in the space. But still, if we're not able to collect that data initially just based on a lack of ability to bring in users that will provide data, I think really we're just looking at, is this viable as a data collection method right off the bat? Obviously, we would.
Go ahead. Sorry. I
said obviously we would be trying to collect data in relation to multiple different supplements, which we would be providing to the space. But what we're trying to see here is, can we bring in people to provide their data initially as the minimum, and then working up from there.
Got it. And what does their data in this context mean?
Experiential data. So we need users that have used the supplements that we can then prove that they've used it, and then have them provide their experience using it over a set period of time. So we are trying to use an incentive structure to accomplish that, but we really do need to see, are we going to be able to bring in enough people that it's even statistically significant data that we'd be looking at.
Got it. I see. Okay. I have a better understanding. Does anyone else have any comments or questions on this approach?
Yeah, I also was wondering, are you going to, specifically try to focus on certain supplements or ones that you think are somewhat, relatively like unknown or just not, or supplements where people really do need to get more information around other people's experiences? Basically, just trying to figure out if there's any specific supplements you guys are trying to, supplement experiential information that you're trying to actually specifically get, with this MVP.
For the MVP, we'd probably be looking at a range of the 10 to 15 most popular, and then if we went ahead and built it out more, we'd be looking at more esoteric supplements that might have a smaller user base, but the data that we collect on them could be very significant.
Yeah, I'm curious along those lines, like, some supplements like vitamin D may not produce like experiential effects, whereas others, might be at least touted to do so, like maybe those that help with focus or concentration or memory or something.
Mm-hmm. And then I also have that's another point as well. This thing, I think I heard using they also want to like verify their experience. So I was wondering, like, how are you going to go about trying to verify their experience other than just having them complete a form and telling you about the experience?
Obviously, this wouldn't be 100%, but we would like them to include a picture of the supplement bottle that they're taking.
That seems reasonable. I mean, like, how much effort is someone going to put into hack to get an NFT? So I think that seems fair.
It's kind of like KYC, but for supplements.
Yeah, you can use Bright Sign to get a notary that they have taken the supplement over video.
And so is that their contribution to the DAO then when they provide the data?
Yeah, that would be their contribution, their experience.
Cool. Does anyone else have anything to say? I'll just randomly go through the list. Taku, Tristan, Roger. Roger, we haven't heard from you if you want to speak up. Rakan, we haven't heard from you, I don't think either. Michael, Matthew. Anyone who hasn't spoken particularly should give feedback at some point. Okay, moving on. Well, good job, Supplement Dow. Excited to see more. And next up, we have Joel from Future Folklore. Oh, vertical video. Okay.
Hey there, Joel here with Future Folklore. So although we're aiming to be like a tech transfer office for all things searching for life, non-human life and technology, our core research question is there other life out there? Can we detect it? And so we have some internal projects in the works for the Psi accelerator here. I'm not quite sure if they're like falsifiable or not, or just sort of data collection or research assistance, but one is an AI interface to UFO materials research. So like there's a couple professors at Stanford who have done lab work on credible materials associated with sightings, and I'd love to put that in a repository and have LLMs talk to it. And the other idea is sort of an eyes on the sky survey, where it's a fun thing getting people looking up at the sky for like 10 minutes, fill out a brief survey afterward, collect some data. So I'd love your feedback. I'd love to find a way to make this more of like a sort of hypothesis-driven research. Thanks.
Cool.
Hey there, Joel here with Future Folklore. So although we're aiming to be like a tech transfer.
Joel, you are here.
Yep.
I like it. So your question is there life out there?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Easy, right?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that is a good research question for sure. And do people have comments or questions for Joel?
Yeah, I'm curious. I know that you asked about alloys and materials. What are you considering as far as detecting signals and things that are of less physical origin?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan of like mainstream SETI work, radio astronomy, lasers. I'd love to support that. Like long term, I guess my big wager is that the search for life is going to sort of break out of just the few elite institutions that are able to afford it and do it now, like NASA and SETI, and basically a lot of them are funded by philanthropist billionaires, which is great, cool. But that to me is a sign that the industry, quote unquote, is just not mature yet. So yeah, I'd love to eventually find ways to support sort of a go-to-market strategy for scientists that are working on stuff that can go on probes and rovers and stuff like that. Yeah, but for like an internal project, basically run by me for the short term, I'm not quite sure how I could get traction there, but I love that side of it. Yeah.
Very cool.
Very cool. I mean, maybe there's like a cell phone or folding at home software you could use. I think the chatbot is cool. I think having people contribute this open source intelligence idea could be like an interesting thing, and seeing, does that lead to people producing useful knowledge for the search for more life? Would be cool.
One idea with the survey is, sort of predicting that a small but consistent percentage of people will see something that they can't identify. It doesn't mean that it's like exotic, obviously, but on average, maybe 2 to 5% of the people saw something that they genuinely could not pinpoint, right? Like that could be interesting. But yeah, if anybody has like an off-the-shelf chatbot like repository, I'd love to hear about it. Like I have one that is designed to like scrape, transcribe and scrape data from podcast content. It's great, but it's like heavily customized to that specific use case. But there's like maybe 30 papers I would throw in this one related to like materials research that's already been done.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And you were looking for a vectorized database earlier as well.
Yeah, I think I have 1 or 2 that would be fine for this.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah, there's a big DAO. I'll just add real quick. There's a big DAO that might partner with the Sky survey, so that could be that could be a fun like public project just to get a lot of people out there and collecting data from people. So that I'm kind of leaning more toward that, but in any case, I'd love to pursue the AI thing as well, like just in addition to that.
Awesome. Anybody else? Questions or comments?
So I'd just like to say, I think there's a lot that you could leverage in terms of cheap sensors to create very widely distributed, very lightweight, cheap monitoring stations that could take advantage of any number of things. Like magnetic fields are very easy to measure. If you thought, for instance, that would be something of interest to look for, that's super cheap. We're talking pennies. Obviously, to integrate that into something else takes a little bit more money, but you could easily envision like a platform where you have a camera on a rooftop, a few other sensors integrated with it, and use any anomalies that go out of baseline to trigger, hey, take the last minute in a rolling buffer and record that, as well as anything that happens after that. I could have sworn people were actually looking at it. I want to say there is already a project like this, but you could take things a lot further too. I mentioned gamma spectroscopy briefly came up in the chat. I just want to say, like, that's something that if you worked the problem and scaled it far enough, I do think you could produce something, let's say sub $200 that you now have gamma spectroscopy on every rooftop for anybody that's enthusiastic enough about this. That'd be huge if you thought that those were interesting things to look for. And there's precedent for this kind of weird stuff too. So the seismologists, the people that really care about earthquakes, they were talking about repurposing some of the sensors in people's mechanical hard drives back in the good old battle days. I know everybody's doing SSDs now, but there are ways that you can leverage stuff that's already there that's incredibly cheap to do through software. So stuff to think about.
I'd love to keep chatting with you, Peter, about this. Yeah, there's one or two groups that come to mind that have kind of an off-the-shelf $200 to $300 system that put up on people's rooftops. But if there's something even cheaper, even something that doesn't have all the functionality, that could be a win, right? Like it's probably easier to onboard orders of magnitude more people with a $10 machine than it is one that's $200 to $300. And
well, I think with some of this stuff, you start with something that unfortunately, like in the beginning, it's more expensive, but as you sculpt and work the problem, Rev 2, 3, 4 suddenly, gets cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. Going out of the gate with something to mass production, it would be hard to achieve something cheap unless it's just a camera and maybe some kind of a ambient light sensor or something. And I got to think that probably already exists. So the question is, how far can you push something like this to other realms of spectroscopy and other types of detectors that people haven't considered yet?
Yeah, those are really good questions.
Also, I wouldn't worry about price too much at this point. Like the difference between a penny and a couple $100 for someone who's looking for extraterrestrial life probably isn't going to make the biggest difference in the world. So like, just go for whatever. If it's a $200, they're going to do it no matter what. So, if you have an idea, don't let the cost necessarily stop you.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah.
But yeah, I think Peter's point about like other sensors and other modalities could be really cool. There was like a measuring earthquakes around the world using like cell phones, accelerometers, which was like a great idea. And I don't know if there's anything for this. I don't know. I mean, this isn't related to like the core part of what you talked about, but this is more like tangential stuff.
Yeah, similar principles of distributing the tech and trying to piggyback on what people already have.
There's one project that really comes to mind called the Cosmic Muon Detector, and it's not directly relevant to what you're trying to do, but you could take the basis of that as a case study and modify it to whatever suits you. If you have specific questions about like what are you trying to detect?
I don't know. I mean, I would probably look like Harvard just published their specs for they just set up a basically UFO. It's crazy. Like they have postdoc positions for UFO studies at Harvard now. They just published their like whole tech stack in a series of like 8 or 10 papers. I'd probably look there to see what are they interested to find. But I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure yet. It'd be cool to find something that they didn't cover because they have decent coverage with their system. And I'll look at the Sky 360 system. That's like the off-the-shelf one for people's homes.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. I mean, as far as materials analysis, though, the it's less distributed just because there isn't yet a way that exists to do this cheaply. But if you ever wanted anything XRF analyzed, I'm more than happy to help. And Alloy's its perfect technique.
Right, that's awesome. I'm really glad to know that you're offering that. Likely take you up on that.
Awesome collaboration, more than the sum of the parts. Excellent. Well, thank you, Joel. Very excited for this.
Appreciate it.
And next, and connect. If you guys or other projects are interested in connecting with Joel, I'm just looking at off the top of my list. Yeah, definitely the NMR stuff and the spectroscopy. So you guys connect. Okay. Next up we have that's a little hard to pronounce.
Hey everyone, my name is Danica.
Where are we?
SOSI-DAO.
SOSI-DAO. So Danica with SOSI-DAO. Sorry. All right. So Danica with SOSI-DAO. Here we are.
Hey everyone, my name is Danica Wilbanks, and my research question is twofold. So as a reminder, I'm working on integrating blockchain technologies into the social sciences. So my broad research question is how best to do that. What changes can we make to current platforms in order to make them more usable to social science researchers? How best to make this transition, because obviously moving into any new practice and research is difficult. And so how do we make it easy and worth folks' time? And then my more narrow research question at the moment for the study that I'm running using the blockchain as a data storage source is what are the political views, the beliefs, and the visions for the future of people who are a part of DAOs and users of blockchain technology. I think that's an interesting question in its own right because to my knowledge, there haven't been any formal studies looking at the differences between the beliefs of people who are part of DAOs and the general population. And as these technologies become more prominent, that's useful to know. And it's also a convenient question to test with one of the first surveys that's being immediately uploaded to the blockchain, because folks who are part of DAOs are more likely to be excited about that and take the survey. And so I think it's a good proof of concept.
Awesome. I think you have like two good, you have a good core idea and then like a broader, like sort of how Koji DAO has like these two things. So I like that there's the bimodalness of it. That's not the right word, but yeah. And I think how do you measure the political beliefs in comparison to a normalized to like a control group? Is there a control group of
So I would
person or a group? How do you measure one group in comparison to another group?
So I took questions from the General Social Survey, which has a large representative group of Americans, and I'd also like to collect my own data to get slightly more recent data. So the control population would probably be a survey on MTurk for now.
Got it. And would you ask them demographic? You'd take one survey and then take another survey and then use that one survey to MTurk people and one survey to Web3 people and then compare them?
Right. And like identical surveys. So
Got
just
it.
to compare the two groups.
Interesting. I mean, it might be interesting to see another one, just like a college campus survey IRL, because a lot of research is based on, those types of surveys as well, but you don't have to, don't overextend yourself.
I like the idea of conducting surveys at grocery stores because, I mean, I guess now with delivery, not so much, but it used to be like everyone had to go there, right? So you could get a more representative sample than college campus. But this particular survey, I don't know, but.
That's good. I mean, yeah, so a grocery store, everyone needs to go, yeah, except if people DoorDash or something. But the DoorDash people are probably the opposite of the people that are probably very similar to the people that live on college campus, maybe, or at least as might need to be sort of similar. Does anyone have a question for Danica?
Danica, sorry if I missed it, but were you thinking of surveying just sort of doing a random sample of just the population, and just asking them in that survey if they use Web3, blockchain, NFTs, or are we gonna like do a separate survey with the general public and then a separate survey with like known Web3 people?
Yeah, I'm trying to specifically target Web3 people. On Telegram, I'm working with Michael they just built this cool like AI survey bot where you can send people one question at a time. And so targeting folks on Telegram groups around Web3, different Discords. But if you have any suggestions about ways to get in touch with people, we've had a hard time getting people to take the survey. And so if folks would be willing to like circulate that in your groups, or if you have better ideas about how to reach people.
I wonder if DAOs could just say, hey, you know, please fill us out, you know. Because then you have a community that has a good buy-in, like maybe even just in their you said Telegram, right? But maybe in their Discords or something.
We can try sending it out, definitely. Go ahead.
I've wondered, Danica, about this is, you know, we don't have to go down the rabbit hole, but I've wondered about like in-wallet surveys before. Like if you could be incentivized, you get a few coins of some, you know, novel coin for this purpose. But like if you fill the survey out, you get 5 survey coins or something. Maybe prompted when you do other transactions in the wallet. Maybe it's a feature of a dApp. I don't know. Just throwing that out there for the group. I've wondered about sort of capturing data at that transaction point.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, that is. And like, Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's kind of the goal for DBDAO, right? Is that participants get as part of the NFT
Exactly.
payment,
Yeah.
a coin.
So if anyone,
okay.
Yeah, definitely. So if anyone wants to use DBDAO, we can chat, and basically, yeah. So you fill out the survey and you get tokens of a certain type in your wallet, as Joel was saying. So yeah, that's kind of the premise, I guess, that we will be using for that idea. What sort of types of questions are you thinking about asking people?
I have questions on just like basic assessments of people's political views, but also I'm curious about like what kind of futures people in DAOs envision, since there is so much experimentation around like different governance structures and different voting structures. And there's a lot of DAOs kind of targeting things that like could sort of take what's currently handled by governments and make those things globalized. And so I have like open-ended questions about people's visions for the future, but then questions about like different political views and general beliefs, and then demographic questions.
Amazing.
Just because like there's so many different DAOs too, so just kind of want to get a better sense of that landscape.
Yeah. Very cool.
I just dropped a couple links in the chat. I'm not sure if you've probably heard of TalentDAO and RNDAO already, but that's just immediately what came to mind when you were talking. And like, it sounds like you have a good reference for general population, but just in terms of like just sharing a couple of resources in terms of research about DAO contributors and things like that. I just wanted to share that.
Awesome.
Well, thank you.
Danica,
Awesome.
I'm wondering, are you aware of anybody doing sociological research on just like people's behavior on using blockchain transactions, like looking at, you know, wallet activity and yeah, just sort of, you know, reverse engineering people's behavior?
There's been a couple big ambitious studies trying to look at blockchain transactions, like Bitcoin transactions. I haven't had a chance to like fully dive into them yet. But yeah, there's a couple of folks doing that.
Amazing. Anyone else? Cool. All right. Well, very excited for it, Danica. And guys, reach out to Danica to collaborate. And if you think that you have access to a DAO that could help take her survey, reach out, and Danica will reach out back to you, and we can get more people working together that way. Awesome. Okay, next up, thank you, Danica. And next up, we have Takomi and Co. with Cannabis DAO. Okay, I'll read it. Can we provide approximately this amount of money for cannabis research? Uh-oh, they have, but I can't hear it, and the audio isn't picking it up. Okay. Okay, so your guys' research question is, can we increase the amount of total investment budget from cannabis research to this much? Okay, I think you guys need to, this might be a research question, but it's not easily testable, I would say. So like this is just a hard thing to like test. If you can come up with $2.5 billion in research funding for cannabis, I would say like maybe narrow it down or rethink the type of research question that you would be trying to answer here. Do other people have constructive feedback for the Cannabis DAO team?
Yeah, I was wondering if they were going to raise that much, or if they're estimating the current amount of funding going into it and then trying to contribute to that. But yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, cannabis is such a rich field here. I think you guys have the ability to come up with a different, or I mean, if this is the topic you're really passionate about, but I think you guys can think of another topic that can help. Maybe Elijah, you might be able to help them a little bit, or if anyone else has is anyone here from the team here?
Yeah, I'm in the Cannabis DAO, and yeah, thank you for feedback. And yeah, so yeah, sorry to misunderstand the requirement, but yeah, I understand your point.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, because you want to have something that you can test here, like, and this is going to be hard to test.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. I would say, like, honestly, since the cannabis industry has largely been unbanked, I've always thought it's been a perfect fit for Web3 to sort of help with that. But there's the double-edged sword of the stigma, right? You're getting both the cannabis and the Web3 blocker, the traditional finance and banking side. So it's almost like this one thing should be able to help the other. Like, Web3 crypto should be able to help solve financial access or the need, right? The lack of financial access to traditional financial capital and banking routes and things like that in cannabis. So if there's some way to address that somehow, if you could crack that nut, if like somehow using Web3 or like figure out some sort of, it comes down to payments, and payment processors, but like I don't know if there's some way to crack that with tech or with DAOs or with some sort of DeFi funding mechanism. Yeah, maybe that would be something to think about.
Yeah, maybe you could survey people based on understand more like why there isn't enough of it and why there isn't more funding for it, or get into a deeper question, like a sort of a deeper scientific question.
Sure. And Elijah, let us contact you later, and yeah, we'd like to discuss with you if you have time. Yeah.
Oh, please, always, anytime.
Thank you so much.
Cool. All right, Peter. Okay, so Peter and Michael from Spectroscopy DAO are here. Oh, and guys, make sure to work on your video next time with the sound. We couldn't hear it, so whatever you were doing last time, try and fix it. Okay, Peter and Michael.
Hi.
So my question is, how do we measure minor compounds in beverage alcohols via NMR? If you stick whiskey in an NMR spectrometer, you see water and you see ethanol. And just in terms of amounts, you ought to be able to detect something that makes up 0.1% of the alcohol of the sample, or even less with more modern instruments. But because you have so much of just one or two components and a limited dynamic range, you really can't see anything else. Now, one way to address this is with different measurement techniques, these different pulse sequences in the case of NMR. That's of interest to me. I want to look into that in the future, but it's also more instrument specific, not available on all machines, especially older ones or more limited ones. So I'm setting that aside for right now and looking at sample preparation. And so I think this question comes down to how can we either remove water from the sample, or how can we extract out those minor compounds from the sample and look at those? And so got a couple candidate ways. One is indeed to absorb the water with a selective absorber like molecular sieves or other drying agents. Another option is extracting flavor compounds with deuterated chloroform to measure those. And so I'll try both of them. They each have advantages and disadvantages, which I can go into in the future. And since this is a tool technique development, examples of the kinds of questions that would be answered using this technique in a more decentralized manner range from safety things like what alcohols have too much methanol in them, to preference things like what out of the alcohols that I like, what are the flavor compounds responsible for that? And so, everyone can go and can measure their own samples of interest. And then bring that back together, building up a data set of different flavor compounds and different alcohols to do machine learning on, for example, whether that's relating it to the processing, the chemistry of making the alcohol, or whether it's relating to the taste descriptors, building up that kind of relation.
Very cool.
Right. So if I can just add real briefly, because I think I interpreted that as a very narrow question that we could get some traction on in the scale of a few weeks. The broader question is basically, besides physical access to instruments, what does it take to get people to use instruments to start asking and answering questions about what's around them? Is providing clear, concrete sample preparation information, how-to guides, enough to get people to start, doing their own science, even when they don't have a scientific background? I think that's kind of the broader question. This is one little chunk in that bigger question. Physical access is not enough. We have an NMR at a makerspace with 500 members, and no one uses it. So, how do we actually get people to engage in this thing? So
interesting. And so you're hypothesizing it. Is it because the preparation method, or because of the utility, or because of the research question?
I think all of those are deeply related. The utility is related to what preparation, how much preparation is required, and what kind of samples you have. I think the hypothesis is that if you provide people with a few clear examples that are relevant to them, they can start tweaking that. Whereas if the only examples are very unrelated, tailored to people in a chemistry grad program, then you're not going to know where to go from there. But I think once you get something that's close, then people can start working and branching out from there. That's the hope, at least.
So this is very similar. You might want to work together with like what Danica was saying around leaving steps out to allow for exploration of the space, and also what sort of Koji DAO was talking about with preparation and adherence to protocols. So maybe you guys can work together. I had another question: is does this assume, like you talked about preparation a lot? Does this assume that the actual sensor remains fixed? Like, is that not a variable that's important here?
So that is a good question, especially when you talk about assembling data sets and when you're trying to compare with everyone else. Then things do become a little trickier as far as some of the analysis that's not directly trying to do machine learning on this on data from different machines, but more like on your own data. It's not such an important thing. I think we have a very old instrument. Peter mentioned last time, I think, that it's been upgraded, but that's still in the 2000s, and that's almost a benefit
in terms of decentralized science, because whatever you can do on our machine, you can do on pretty much any other currently functioning machine. There are more elaborate things that you can do on some machines and not others. So yeah, there are differences, but a lot of the basics are available across machines, and the preparation would be pretty comparable between them. So I think that's not really a concern starting out with the yeah.
Very good. Very good. And other people, open up the floor here.
So I actually came across something unusual on Twitter of all places. There is a energy drink called Adraful, and it looks like, for the supplement people in the room, it seems to have adrafinil in it, which seems to be pretty brazen. And so I would love to see if we could actually analyze it and detect it, and then maybe even quantify it. But yeah, it's similar to modafinil, which is a narcolepsy drug, and so it has to do with alertness, which makes sense in an energy drink. I don't know if I intend to drink this stuff myself, but I am very curious to see if it is in fact there and detectable. And it presents some interesting challenges, because if this stuff is carbonated, one of the first things you need to do is make sure that it's not carbonated, and so we can explore cheap and easy ways to do that in a makerspace. There's a technique called helium sparging. Apparently, if you just introduce helium into a dissolved gas, all the other stuff just disappears. Or we could try pulling the vacuum on it. I don't know, but cheap and interesting sample prep.
Very cool. Yeah, I think a cool methodology thing and would be interesting, and definitely make sure to connect up with the other people around, specifically at Koji DAO. I think that would be great.
Actually, I was just wondering if you guys have had like the chance to look at some resources regarding citizen science and some of the motivations that people have had, which led them to actually participate in those type of projects.
Definitely. And if you happen to know any resources, definitely everyone should share them with Peter and Michael.
Like you could sort of play off people's consumer outrage. Like if you start showing that certain products don't have what they say they have, or even there's a little bit sketchy formulas or ingredients. I feel like it could be a good way to tap into the sentiments that are sort of rumbling under a lot of Web3 movement. For what it's worth.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think anything that lets people know more about the food, and supplements and things like that, the better. You have to be careful about making claims. There are some things that I think I've detected, but it would be good to cross-validate, because that's how one gets sued. Making a claim that isn't true is kind of akin to yelling fire in a movie theater if there is not a fire. So it's an interesting line to walk, but there is work like this being done. I think Consumer Lab does some of this kind of work.
Very cool. A distributed consumer research for energy drinks would be great. I think people would pay for that too. You never know. Okay. Anyone else? All right. Next up we have Rakan with HackAge. And that's great, you guys. I think this is a very cool project. I like it a lot. Rakan, are you here?
Hello,
Hi.
we are
Yes, I'm
HackAge,
here.
and we are a project dedicated to the removal of advanced glycation end products from the extracellular matrix. These products form when sugars and toxic metabolites react with proteins in the matrix. And one of them is called glucosapane, and it is known to cross-link collagen fibers together, making tissues stiff. So when we look at glucosapane, we see that it does not have weak bonds. However, to be enzymatically cleaved, it is not necessary for the substrate to have weak bonds. However, there are no known glucosapane breakers. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with an enzyme that is known to break a similar look-alike substrate. And if necessary, we're going to use directed evolution techniques to engineer it further. So we're going to introduce amino acid substitutions. Then we're going to see how those substitutions affect protein 3D conformations. And then we're going to evaluate how those new variants bind their substrate. For this, we've been using a tool called Plex, developed by LabDAO. However, so we have a few problems to solve. So firstly, our enzyme must be catalytically active. However, the sole fact that it binds the substrate more efficiently does not necessarily mean that it's going to cleave it. So binding affinity is not equal to catalytic activity. These are two separate things. So what we could do, we could just screen thousands upon thousands of protein variants, but it's going to be expensive. The solution would be to find a way to simulate catalysis in silica and firstly validate our pipeline using a model well-studied enzyme, and then see how our predictions match real-life experimental data. So the goal is to do as much screening computationally as possible and robustly reduce the screening sequence space. And to distill everything that I have said so far, can we reduce the sequence space? So our tasks are to choose a model enzyme, then to generate data sets that will evaluate the impact of amino acid substitutions on enzymatic activity, and then replicate the findings using the pipeline. And the overall goal is to reduce screening costs by establishing a reliable metric that predicts enzymatic activity from computational data. Thank you very much.
Cool. Anyone have any feedback for Recon?
I am curious if you've ever looked at nattokinase as an enzyme.
Well, so the thing is that at this step, we are looking for a suitable model enzyme, and we are open to suggestions. So if you have a good enzyme in mind with established assays and which is well studied and has been used in directed evolution experiments, yeah, please go ahead and send links in the chat. That would be appreciated.
Well, I don't know if it has been studied in these particular contexts, but I guess my gut feeling is that there might be something interesting going on there, as well as, say, seroteptase would be the other one. You know, it's one of those things where it sounds like you're going to look at quite a number of things in an automated fashion, and so there isn't a huge cost to add one to the list. I would be very curious what you see in those particular ones.
Oh yeah, this would be very interesting to see. So, as I said, we are open to suggestions. Yeah, we tried actually going after AGE breaking enzymes right away, but then we realized that it's not correct to infer catalytic activity from binding energies. That's why we need to validate our pipeline. And the crucial step would be to do wet lab validation assays, and these assays have to be well established, simple to do, and cheap. And this is kind of crucial for us.
Do you have any interest in looking in amyloid fibrils?
Well, yes. So everything which is related to tissue stiffening, extracellular matrix, we are interested in. As a starting point, we chose advanced glycation end products because that was the focus of interest of the core team who started the whole project. However, we are very much willing to diversify and attract more people. Sure.
My feeling is that nattokinase might actually be active for amyloid fibrils, and I think people have actually talked about looking at the conformation of amyloid using NMR. Just a crazy thing I'm throwing out there. I don't have the right background to even barely be asking these questions, but my feeling is that there might be something there.
Oh. Okay, interesting. So computationally, we can do a lot of things at no cost. However, when it comes to lab validation, we actually need to produce those enzymes and purify them and check their activities. And if we can do it as simply as measuring product formation spectromically, like in 96 well format, that is perfect for us. If it's as sophisticated as NMR, maybe it's not as useful.
Gotcha.
Is there ways for people to get involved? Like how can other people get involved? Like how is it not how can people besides you do it?
Oh, okay. This is actually the thing that I'm thinking about a lot, because at this moment this project is very scientific, and so what we are trying to achieve is what whole research groups and whole research institutions are trying to do. What I'm thinking is to attract people who know exactly what needs to be done, because currently we're just guessing. And if there are people who are willing to learn fast and contribute to the project, so we could use this like a community brain, that would be very much helpful. Yeah, but currently it's me and a few other people who are driving this project forward, and we would benefit from outside help. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Okay. Well, perfect. Definitely. It sounds like there could be a collaboration with Peter and co. And yeah, excited for it. Okay. So from Hack Age, we go to Deep Age with Samir. Can AI deep learning analyze biological data more efficiently to find new age biomarkers or confirm existing age biomarkers? Will multiple biomarkers combinations be better than one biomarker? Do other stronger biomarkers correlate to cellular aging exist? Can new biomarkers help explain cellular aging much more? Can we find drugs to influence these biomarkers? Okay, lots of stuff. Are aging biomarkers? An aging biomarker is a biomarker parameter of an organism that changes in a predictable way as the organism ages. Measure of DNA damage, telomere length, epigenetic change, protein quality control, metabolic processes, and cellular senescence, among others. Strongest current aging biomarker is DNA. Okay, methylation. There is a aging clock for methylation, and these other ones. Okay. What is cellular aging? Is when the state where the cell loses the ability to divide and function properly. Why deep learning AI well suited to work with high dimensional data. So you can use this AI for high dimensional data, multiple representations, performs well with unstructured data. Okay, what is deep age? Our project aims to use AI and biological data to discover interventions that can halt or even reverse aging. Okay, so they're going to test out many different ones. Okay, I mean, Samir, are you here? He might have had to go. I might have seen. I mean, my feedback would be there's a lot here. Figure out maybe the one or two of these that you're interested in. 5 is probably too many, and focus on the one or two that you're most interested in. I would also be curious to hear more about how you plan to do the research in a somewhat decentralized way. It doesn't have to be all decentralized, but maybe what part of it that you're thinking about as includes sort of a group of people. Did anyone else? Peter, Rakan, Sohail, Tristan, Michael, anyone else who's left on the call? Julian, Ledgerback, Joel, Jackson.
Yeah. I don't have a particular question, but I would be very much interested in having a chat and learning about this project more because it overlaps greatly with my area of interest. Yeah.
Sweet. Awesome. Well, you guys make sure to send each other a DM. That is Samir and with DeepAge, and yeah, connect up with Rakan. All right. Next up, we have Share Your Gut Health with Taku, who had to leave also, but
so
with fecal biotransplantation.
Hi everyone, this is Taku. I would like to apologize that I had to leave earlier in the first Combinator session. So first of all, I just wanted to quickly answer the question I got at the first session. The fecal microbiota transplantation (FMT). So what it is actually is, and so we collect the stool from the healthy donor, and we will receive the entire stool that you deliver once, and we will receive it in like a bucket type of thing, and the donor bring the entire stool to the hospital, and we process it and extract the microbiome fraction, and then transplant the microbiome fraction into the patients with ulcerative colitis. So this is the logistics of the FMT. And with that, today's theme is a research question. So here's the scheme of what I'm thinking. So the participants, I would call them as gut hackers, and they donate to the bank. And at the bank, the stool will be analyzed and also shipped to develop biomedicine for the patients. And through the biomedical businesses, revenue generated, and the money returns to the gut hackers. At the same time, we analyze the donor stool extensively. So we will return the stool analytics data as well. And that will help the gut hackers actual hacking of their gut fitness to improve their mental fitness or physical fitness. So I would like to establish this type of system. So my research questions are, can this approach incentivize gut hackers to participate in stool donation system? And second question is, can gut hackers improve their gut fitness by using gut metrics and collective learning? And collective learning meaning that if they know their gut fitness status, gut metrics status in detail, and we provide some social network type of thing among the gut hackers to exchange their information and learning from the data. That may improve the gut fitness collectively. So that's something I wanted to measure. And then lastly, can we make an AI to control gut fitness as a user, a gut hacker, which is I'm sorry for the typo. So if the gut hacker learn each other how to improve that, I wanted to make it an AI to suggest the better solution to each users. So that's it.
Cool. Awesome. Just people who are still here, make sure to keep it 1 to 2 minutes. We're running a little long, so just when it compounds, it gets a lot. I think so. Let's go back to his questions here, and people have been pretty good at it. So I mean, I like this. I think I think using the AI to help people improve. I don't think it's here now, but did anyone catch what gut fitness means? That was a question I had. But
probably just like microbiome health, right? Like I don't know.
Got it. Okay. I mean, I'm curious how you measure gut fitness would be my question. But it sounds like sounds cool, and you're sort of closing the loop with like a data thing and putting AI in the loop and figuring out if the AI can predict this optimization for gut fitness. But I like the idea, and you can collect a lot of data easily. Do other people have questions or comments? Yes, go ahead, Rakan.
So it's not a question, it's rather a suggestion. So previously we had a discussion with Brian, and I had this idea of creating engineered probiotics that would, so basically bacteria that express enzymes that degrade advanced glycation end products in the gut, so of the food origin or produced by gut microflora. So it's basically a probiotic supplement. And I was wondering if we could kind of collaborate, maybe 3-4 project of ours with Supplement DAO, with Koji DAO, to make such probiotic and then use this gut fitness metric to assess the overall impact, and that would be interesting.
Excellent. Well, that sounds exciting. And hopefully Taku can get back to you on that. But I mean, it sounds good. Anybody else? All right. Thank you, Taku, when you listen to this video, and make sure to connect with everyone. And next up, we have Julian from Voluntas.
Hey there, this is Julian with Voluntas. As a reminder, we're essentially a combination of a clinical trial company with an open kind of token-backed ecosystem to provide kind of ownership of data and the economic part of it to the patient participants. And so the question we're investigating is not so much like a biopharma question, right? There's lots of drugs that this model could work in, lots of, pharma companies and kind of verticals that it could be relevant to. The question is more like one around kind of the operations of the clinical trial industry and how patients participate. And in particular, it's, this is a space where folks participate in trials for lots of reasons, and they find out or don't find out about trials for lots of reasons. Some of those reasons are economic, some of them are not. And so the question is basically, can kind of providing this increased level of ownership over the data and economics to patient, does that move the needle from an awareness, recruitment, and retention perspective for the trial, right? Because right now in the industry, it's very hard to find people. A lot of people don't find out about trials they might participate in, and people kind of don't follow up after trials, or they lose track of them. And so it's not obvious that this economic kind of new economic model, like I think it should move the needle, but it's a question of how much does it move the needle essentially.
Awesome. So thank you. Great work, Julian. And yeah, so like, there's some like psychology there, and comparing it like an incentivized trial to an existing trial system, and like, does that improve outcomes? Or another question I have is like, does it improve retention, but also does it improve like science, in the sense that like sometimes let me mute you. Oh, you can come back online in a second. Sometimes like one of the things that I've noticed with surveys, when you take a survey in a university, is a lot of people just answer white noise and randomness because they get their money. So, I mean, one question is like, yeah, does it improve like the number of people that will take the survey? But also another question is like, does it improve the quality? And maybe quality isn't as much of a big deal here for a biomedical thing, but I think it is an interesting thing to look at. Maybe they don't apply the thing as well, and that causes it to be not as efficacious, which would sort of lead to some different outcomes. But I think that's another interesting take on this subject of improving clinical trials.
Yeah, that's super interesting. It's so hard to measure that. Like, I can think of, a lot of the surveys I've answered over the years where like, I just don't give a crap. So I'm just like, it's not quality, but it's like hard to, if you're just looking at my data, you don't know that. But I think that's a great point. Like because a lot of clinical trials do rely on just like, there are like biomarker ones where it's a little bit more like, okay, you took someone's A1C levels. That's kind of, it is what it is. But then there's like subjective responses where you really want people to feel like they have a stake in it. I think one area that we are excited about, and I think is kind of related, but like, COVID, I think, had a lot of tailwinds for just the idea of like more diversity in clinical trials, right? So typically a clinical trial is like I lived in San Francisco for a while, and it's like, if you happen to be a patient of UCSF, you're probably going to have pretty good access to clinical trials, but like you're probably like kind of rich and like probably white, you know? So like it's I think this kind of virtualization of trials, which there's a bunch of different technologies involved, we're kind of hoping to play into, where it's more like, no, you could be anywhere, you know, as long as you're like engaged. And the hope is that that leads to more representation, kind of like urban versus rural and racially, socioeconomically, but also just like more robust participation, like you're saying.
Yeah, awesome, very good. Anyone else? Elijah, Jackson, Ledgerback, Michael, Peter, Rakan, Tristan. You guys should chat. I wouldn't worry about two people doing like clinical trial stuff. I think, you know, the starting point will lead to very different pathways. So I don't really see any.
Oh yeah, no. Anytime startups are like worried about competing with each other, I just feel like that's always like hilarious to me, because like you're not. It's a huge market, you know.
Yeah, you guys will definitely find your own niche. So I think you should chat and just figure out. I think it would be you're both in the family here, so it's good too. You can figure out what each one's working on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tristan, you want to say something?
Yes. I've already sent them a message on Telegram.
Okay, cool.
Figure something out.
All right, cool.
I need to. My Telegram's full of like back in my retail degen days. I need to clear it out because like it's just like all my private messages are like spammers. So I apologize if I need to work on this.
We will always assume best intention in the Combinator cohort, so don't worry. But just maybe get another one and replace it.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna. I should just delete the. I need to delete everything.
Notify us, and we'll change you in the group here. Awesome. Okay. Well, we will. Thank you very much, Team Voluntas, and we'll move on to DeSci block. So this is Eddie's first time. This one wasn't part of it last time, but he's doing like, I'll just give a very brief thing. He's trying to do is like AI to do analysis on data automatically.
Hi, Combinator team. So to answer the question of what research is conducting, currently it's more or less a researching tool. The goal of this tool is to allow for many of the DAOs under DeSci to collaborate, as much of their data can be used to answer larger questions. For example, we can start finding correlations between hair DAO and cannabis DAO, finding correlations between how can substances improve another factor, even as a side effect. So that's what my tool is bringing the infrastructure to allow for these communities to collaborate. And we want to use tools like DBDAO or for more of the data lake or unstructured data sort of use cases, and all hosted on Nearboss as the front end. So anyone can use it. The goal is to make it as accessible and as easy to have many community members interact with the data and start answering wider questions.
Cool. I mean, sounds great. I want to know more about specifics here. So like, what type of analysis are you going to do? I mean, think, you know, maybe talk to those DAOs you mentioned, to the cannabis DAO and everyone, and hair DAO, and figure out like what sort of analysis they need, and you can go from there. Anyone else? I know we are a little bit over here, so we'll move. Anyone else? Well, I think you, Eddie, definitely make sure to talk to the people in this setup meetings. You don't have to do IR, you don't have to do video, but you should just send a message to everyone in the cohort and say like, what sort of analysis do you think you guys are going to need? And just do a little survey. That's what this cohort is about, and figure out, you know, and then, you know, hopefully there'll be one that is clear and obvious, and try and build for that use case. Okay, next up we have long list and Sohi. I don't know if he's here currently. He's not. Okay, but we will.
Hello guys, it's Nima, and in this video we are going to talk about how our tool actually gonna help you, and how Longlist is going to help people to access solid, robust, and reliable data in Web3 private market. Longlist is going to actually collect Web3 private market data to assist investors, market researchers, and founders. There are numerous questions we can help our users answer, but there are some of the key ones. founders can leverage Web3 private market data to gain insight into their competitors' activities. There are multiple strategies that founders can deploy to identify and attract investors for subsequent funding rounds using our private market data. Investors can utilize Web3 private market data to discover and source potential deals in specific categories and industries. There are multiple methodologies that founders can use to find potential partnership opportunities with other companies using Web3 private market data that we are going to offer. Investors can leverage our database to perform accurate valuations and benchmarking in order to finalize investment deals. And market researchers can use multiple approaches to identify industry trends, significant events, and innovations using our Web3 private market data in long list. But how we are going to actually deploy all of these questions and answer them? We are going to use crowdsourced submissions and use user-generated and actually crowd knowledge to gain the most out of the data and to be the most updated database and be the most reliable at the same time.
Excellent. Anybody have any comments or questions for Longlist team?
Yeah, one question that I have is whether their platform has some visualization tools. So I see that it's only just a list, like entries of Web3 projects. Is there like a way to synthesize them and see them in a more visual format?
Great question. I think maybe Eddie would be a good person to talk to about that. He does like analysis, but maybe visualization is what everyone needs. So yeah, ping Eddie. I would say like maybe look at how having more options might lead to different types of funding outcomes. And like if you give person one option, how does that differ from multiple options would be another possible question. But anybody else? But the visualization is a good point. I think that would be valuable. All right. Okay. Now, let's see. Oh, I want to share this screen here. Let's see, Google slide. This. Can I share this? Share. Two. Okay, so like last week's assignment was to do the research question, and one of the key parts around so just thank you all for doing that presentation. That was great work and really cool stuff. So this next part is about like it's just a couple slides, so don't worry, and we'll go through it quickly. Is like how to build a community. So like you have your topic, but now like what makes DeSci cool and interesting is the ability to do this research not just in a lab or as a PhD student, but to do it with the help of other people. Of course, like you need the other people to be there. So you need to that's why this is the second of 8 topics, is because it's very important to start to build out that community. And so DeSci is about community. So you have to build a community. The benefits of building a community is that you can now test out ideas before. So, you have a research paper, and if you imagine you put in all this work into it, but like the final outcome of that work, no one really cares about. With DeSci, it's cool. You can sort of test out, you can build a community and ask them if they're interested in this idea first, so that if it does pan out, you at least know that, I had some people that were a bit interested in it. The other cool thing is like when you build a community, you're crowdsourcing your ability to get related work, and you're also broadening your community of people that you can potentially collect data from. So like in a lot of these biomedical things, you start to build the community of patients like me, sort of thing, like that website, where they'll build out that data, and also that community will be very valuable down the road. When someone wants to work with you guys, having a user base of 100 or 1,000 very targeted people of a specific type will be a huge incentive for closing the deal of working together with this pharmaceutical company per se, or whatever it is. And then the last thing is you can give an incentive towards the people. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So I just wanted to give a couple slides about community building, but don't think of this is just stuff I thought of. Don't think of this as the end all be all. Make it your own, and that's what the final the presentation next week is on starting to build a community and seeing what things worked and what didn't work. Okay, so I think a big part of community building is having content. So engage with your community. Keep posting stuff that is interesting and relevant. Don't post trash. High quality stuff. Give people feedback on what's working and what's not working in your community. Keep people engaged with interesting content and celebrate things that are going well in the community. I think there's some hierarchy, or not hierarchy, but like training and support is a big thing. As you bring people on board, give them a mentor or give them a person to ask questions to, so that once they join, they don't feel lost. If there's any page of how-tos or things that they can do to get started, maybe an intro page on what is X, where X is clinical trials, spectroscopy, cannabis research, any of these types of things, that might be a good place for people to get started. So giving people a place to get started. Some other things, reward people. If people are doing great work in your community, call them out and say how great of a job that they're doing. If you have the ability, give prizes, badges, public recognition, whatever it is, whatever that works within the context of your setting. But think about ways to reward people for doing good things. Just keep people motivated. Don't make it too serious. Make it sort of fun and socials. If there's any gamification here, that's good. If you can do an IRL thing, like that's brilliant. We've had a lot of good outcomes from DSci NYC, but getting people to strengthen their ties with each other through physical interaction. Sometimes that's not possible, but if it is, think about it. Be transparent with what you're trying to do. It helps to collect data, and I think it makes people more likely to invest time and effort into your project if you're clear about like what your intentions are with the data, with building the community, with whatever you're trying to do. Give people ownership of it. So make people feel like they have ownership of the outcome of the project and they're not just sort of in it. Encourage, I think one thing is like encourage sort of leadership roles when needed. If you can give people specific tasks, that helps to reduce the burden on them. If someone can be the steward of X, they feel ownership of that role, and helps in sort of giving people power to make decisions. And it gives them purpose a little bit, like they are the person that is in charge of X, and now they feel that they have that purpose. And then get feedback from people. Probably not doing everything right. I mean, initially, so talk to people, DM them, ask them what's working, ask them what's not working, where you can improve if they have ideas, what you suck at, what you're great at. And it also helps to just getting feedback from people helps to keep the community tight and communication flowing, which is really valuable. So definitely, I think in the context of DSci, I would recommend starting a Telegram group, starting a Twitter. And it's not really about, for Twitter, it's not, I don't think it's about like just posting content. You really want to start to engage with content that's already out there. So don't just think of it as a microphone, but start to follow interesting people and follow and responding to other types of content that are related to what you're doing. Also, don't be afraid of DMing people, like with authentic questions. You get a better response rate that way. Don't like copy paste though, like things asking for whatever, like for a 30-minute phone call. If there's a specific question, ask them and DM them that specific question based on a specific piece of content. The response rate is really a lot higher, like infinitely higher, if it's crafted well and for a specific audience. So for the other thing I need to say is like we won't be meeting Tuesday. We'll be meeting Wednesday because Tuesday is July 4th. So for Wednesday when we meet, I want people to make a 1 to 2 minute video on, I want people to start, the most important part is start building your community. So start doing that for what it means to build a community in the context of your project. And make a 1 to 2 minute video about things that are working well in your community building efforts, things that are not working well that you try it in your community building efforts, things that, what is the state of your community? So where are you at now? And then this is a new thing, but I think it's important, is for this, you should connect with another group in the Combinator thing and say who that other group is in the video, and see if there's like a way that you can share community members between each other, or if there's a way to share lists of people, so that now you have 5 people, you found 5 people, another group found 5 people. There's 2 in each of those groups that is that you can shoot over to each other, and now you have 7 people. So you have to connect with another team in the Combinator cohort. Make a 1 to 2 minute video about it. Submit it at noon on Wednesday. Here's the QR code. Here's the link. We'll be sharing the slides and the video. And and then the last thing I promise is, why are we doing this? Because the next session on Friday, we're going to start like collecting data from this group of people. I mean, this will be the 3rd of 8. So, and it's really only 7 and then 6. So it's sort of almost halfway there, surprisingly. So we need to start collecting data and then analyzing and then writing it up and then demo and then final pre-presentation, dress rehearsal, and then the final presentation. So it's quickly happening, even though we're just the 2nd time in. And so what you're doing is you're building that community so that you can collect data from people and starting it up. So think that through. That's sort of leading it up to what's happening. Okay, so we'll send this final part out, this final video out to the people that are listening. But I just wanted to thank everyone here who's remaining. I know this has been a long, we'll try and shorten it up a little bit. Thank you guys for staying this entire time. Very much appreciated. And I'll just ask if anyone has any questions. Feel free to ask them. But other than that, thank you and enjoy the rest of your evening. And Peter, do you have something you want to say?
No.
Okay. Well, thank you guys for coming, and talk later. All right. Bye now.